everybody to the November meeting of the um, of the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission. And this meeting will be recorded, and we are open to the public, and public comment is welcome. But after the public comment period, if only commissioners can speak. And I am excited to introduce David Friedman, who is our newest member. He has just been appointed by the board on Tuesday. Hey, John, now we have a member of the public. Um, uh, so David, and I just like to say that we are continuing to get a lot of highly qualified applicants, and David is certainly in that category. It's very, I got a note from Susan Cunningham's staff saying that C2E2 is really rocking it. And that's why everybody wants to be on C2E2. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that that conclusion is correct, that all the applicants are it's because we're such a rocking group, but it's nice that Susan's staff thinks so. Anyway, with that, Henry, David, sorry. Okay, I'm awake now. David, we would love to have you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you both to Cindy and Doug for all your help with the process, and also several other folks who helped me with learning more about the committee. I'm definitely very excited to be here. I think you all rock. I think I'm excited about joining.
You have come to the last couple of meetings, so I appreciate your opinion.
and I'm looking forward to making a difference. I've been either in advocacy or government for my entire 20 plus career. I'm an engineer, but also a policy wonk, and I'm bored if all I do is engineering. I have deep experience on climate issues, energy issues, transportation issues. So that's another great thing I feel like with this group is, you have a very wide purview. I know there's a lot of building stuff, which I've also gotten more experience in recently, but looking forward to diving in and looking forward to working with everyone on this. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. And I just want to mention that Katie just texted and was planning to join us, but her Thanksgiving plane was very, very late, so she's not able to be on the call, but she wishes everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And with that, I think the first thing on our agenda is Lisa for 2 items. And first of all, I want to thank Lisa because she agreed to take, we as C2E2 have a position on the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission. So we have somebody who serves as a full-time member, not just as a liaison. So Lisa's agreed to do that, which means she's a full-fledged member of 2 commissions, which is a lot of monthly meetings. And we also, the Parks and Rec Commission, Forestry Commission, and C2E2 have a joint meeting on environmental issues called the NRJAG, which stands for Natural Resources Joint Advisory Group. And I didn't appoint Lisa to that as our C2E2 person because I thought she had enough meetings already, because I happen to know she also serves on a 3rd commission. So I didn't appoint her. So the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission chair appointed her on our behalf. So now she's on that as well. So I asked Lisa to tell us so you've been on Forestry and Natural Resources for almost a year, but also, so to give us a little update about what's been happening there, but also Lisa is our rep to the low residential study. She has a background in parks, trees, biophilia. So we appointed her to that. And that is clearly, if we've seen from all the public comment we've gotten at our previous 2 meetings, going to be a hot item. And so the kickoff meeting for that has been held. So with that background, Lisa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thanks for the time to provide a couple updates this evening. So starting with the low residential study, the October 25th LPRC went well. It was led by the Planning Commission and attended by myself for C2E2 and a member of the FNRC Commission. There were also a few Arlington residents there for public comment. It was the same presentation that C2E2 had seen the month before. Overall, the meeting was informational about the scope of the study, what the next few phases are, and their current state. As we've learned in past meeting, the main goals of this study is to improve the stormwater system and expanding tree canopy, and the study will not change maximum building footprint size, set absolute total square footage limits for lot coverage, or change the definition of lot coverage, but it is looking at things like adding new impervious area limits, possibly a minimum plantable area requirement, and adjusting yard and setback requirements to allow for increased tree conservation. Also establishing impervious area limits based on lot size or zoning district. So lots of different factors they're looking at here. I encourage everyone to look at the low residential study website that Jenna dropped in the chat. It goes over all of the definitions of the buzzwords that I just said, since I had some questions going into that meeting as well, but they have a really comprehensive documents on there and backgrounds on those terms and studies and what they're looking at, as well as some helpful maps. So check out that website, or there is also a public open house on Sunday, December 21st. So if you're interested, also encourage folks attend that meeting. And this winter, they're getting the word out about this, conducting the study. And then in the spring and summer, they'll be evaluating their options. And then in the fall and winter of 2026, they will be finalizing the recommendations for the county board's action. So they're hoping to get this all wrapped up within the year. I'm sure we will be hearing much more about this in the coming months, but just wanted to provide a status update there. And then next, quick status update on the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission. First, I'd like to plug the Arlington County's new urban forestry website. Jenna, again, thank you for dropping the link in the chat. But it just went live last month, and it's an incredible resource. We were all blown away by how comprehensive it is. You can find anything on there related to trees, invasive species, native species, what to do if you see a downed tree, if you know a nice spot to plant a tree, volunteer opportunities. They even have the rules about Christmas lights on public trees on there. Anything you can think of, it is probably on that website. So highly encourage everybody to visit that website and just play around on there, and definitely spread the word. And then finally, we're looking at the Tree Canopy Fund right now and finding ways to sustain it. When it was stood up in 2007, it was decided that it would not be funded by taxpayer dollars. It's supposed to be funded by developer or private funds, but for the last 2 years, it has been taxpayer funded. So they have been looking at other avenues for funding and really trying to bolster the governance structure to avoid these issues in the future. So we're working on those recommendations now. But good news story with the Tree Canopy Fund, of the trees that they have planted, 71.4% of them were found. Some were, in backyards that you can't really access or see. But of that 71.4% that they have tracked down and found, over 88% of those were in really good condition, which is a great success story and even more reason to keep the program going and contribute to Arlington's 40% tree canopy fund, tree canopy goal. So that's all I have for the group this evening. Thanks for the time, and I'll turn it back over to you, Cindy.
Thanks, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? And yeah, that tree health study, I got an email saying you had a tree planted in your yard through the tree fund like 11 years ago. Can we come and see if it's still okay? I'm like, knock yourself out, because I have no idea which tree that was. But they did, and they found it, and they're like, yes, it was in good condition. I was happy. But it's when you think about the fact they couldn't just go look, but they were contacting every homeowner. That was a lot of work, and it was great that it was so positive. Any questions for Lisa? I'm sure that, as she said, there will be a lot more coming on the low residential study. All right, well then moving on. Doug, I think the next two items are budget items and the first one goes to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Cindy. I'll talk about the letter that I drafted and sent around. Let me give a little background first. Last year was the first year for Cindy and I to be the leadership team here, and we were given notice of opportunities to contribute to the county budget discussion. And just to put a little context, of course, we all know the county budget year starts July 1. But usually in April is when the county board votes to approve the budget as submitted and proposed by the county manager. So in February and March, there are opportunities for the various commissions, including C2E2, to have some input with the county manager and the finance staff as to what changes or status quo should be on budget issues. But it turns out that really by that time the cake is pretty well baked, and the already the county manager has a proposed budget, and it's kind of hard to make changes in February and March when the board is going to vote in April. So it seemed to me, and I managed to persuade Cindy, I think, that really we need to be much more in front of the ball and proactive in an earlier date here. And so I wanted to get a letter out to the county manager and the county board and do it now here in November to get ahead of the curve a little bit so that it can be clear from the get-go that we think that the county should allocate more resources to more staffing. And so, you know, there's a lot of ways that the county could spend money on climate change or energy and environment. And I thought if you read this letter, you'll see I really just tried to narrow it down to a specific ask of 2 staff positions in the air team. And right now, the air team is only 6 people. There's 3 people with the climate policy office. That makes 9 staff positions for the entire climate change energy efforts that the county is doing. There's 3,200 people that work for the county. The county has a budget of 1.6 billion. And I didn't want to compare what they're doing on climate change to what they're doing for other programs. So I didn't want people to think that, oh, you're trying to get them to cut, you know, affordable housing. God knows, they don't want to do that. So I'm just being an advocate here. I'm laying down a marker. We know that this is a, quote, bad budget year, as so many are. And so I'm kind of laying groundwork for the future here. For this one, we're saying, look, give us 2 more staff positions. And I'm saying there could also be financial incentives for Arlington County businesses and for Arlington County residents. And I didn't mention this in the letter, but the most obvious example was the previous version of the GBIP, which proposed money to decarbonize existing buildings. But that's just one possible example of what the county could be doing with just a few pennies of its tax money. It's not doing anything like that right now. So we've got this letter. Rob suggested some changes, and I sent around this afternoon an email responding to Rob's suggestions. I did like one of Rob's suggestions, and I think we should move the last paragraph of the letter that talks about the climate action resolution and move that paragraph up to make it the second paragraph in the letter. So happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
I'll just comment that Doug, that was great background, and Doug did raise that very strongly. And if you look at our work plan for this year, you know, which we adopted a long time ago, you'll see that it says Doug Snoyenbos will write a letter on the budget asking for 2 air staff, and he's right on schedule 9 months later or whenever it was. So thank you very much, Doug, for following up.
And I guess so. Jenna has pulled up Rob's comments to the letter, and I guess it might be easier to go back to the earlier version that I sent around.
Well,
Rob had suggested deleting a sentence that Cindy and I had worked on about how we know or why we think that the air team's efforts would be enhanced by additional staff. And that's based on a statement by Jason Papakosma under our interrogation at one of our meetings. So I don't think we're going to be getting Jason in hot water for honestly answering our question. But I do think we should make it clear why we think that they could scale up activities and get more bang for the buck with more staff.
Henry, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. This looks really good, Doug. I haven't had a chance to go over it yet with a fine-tooth comb, but one thing that I was thinking of as you were sharing the background, is it more the case that it's like potentially good for one person to be on the climate policy team and one person to be on the air team of the two that you're requesting? Or do you think the air team's, I mean, given what Jason has said before, I am inclined to agree, but.
So here's the thing, Henry. When the Climate Policy Office was set up a couple years ago, they had two people, Jen and Rich. And then they also at that time specifically gave the Climate Policy Office 2 more FTEs. And so far, Jen has filled one of those FTEs with
there's a
Raina, whose last name escapes me. But Jen has not yet tried to fill that 4th position. And I'm sure she has great reasons for that. So that's, I mean, you raise an excellent point, but that's why I thought it'd be better just to focus on the air team, which, you know, as it's been explained to me, the Climate Policy Office does policy, but it's the air team that does implementation.
Yeah.
And so it's the implementation team, I think, that would most benefit, or the climate efforts would most benefit from additional staff for the implementation group, which is the air team.
Yep, I forgot about the one position unfilled so far, so thanks for that background.
Any other comments? Is there, I think, Rob, okay, I see a question, but I don't see who it's. Oh, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug, for all and Cindy as well, for all the effort into this. I think it's great that we're trying to get out earlier in the process. And hopefully this can be part of a longer term drumbeat to help them change the way they're thinking about things. 2 comments. One, I'm not sure when this is due. So I don't know if I could deliver on volunteering this, but one mantra you're probably going to get sick of me bringing up when it comes to talking about climate change is the degree to which it will help our economy. I am a firm believer that we need to just address climate change for all the harms it can create. But I also think reminding people that this is not a trade-off issue. It's actually an investment in our county and in improving our economy is often a helpful thing to do, especially to pre-blunt some of the other arguments. So depending on when this is due, I could try to put something together, or just for the future, I can try putting something together. And then my second point real quick is I would like to suggest a hybrid version of what Rob suggested in terms of mentioning staffing and financial incentives in the first paragraph. I do think it's helpful for the reader to understand in the first paragraph the basics of what we're looking for. And so what I would suggest is rather than putting it in that sentence, there could be a second sentence that says, you know, specifically requesting additional funding for staffing and that you consider incentives. And that way it's consistent with the way the letter is written, but also as the reader right up front, I really like, you know, Rob's idea there that, you know, you want the reader right up front to know what you're asking for as they digest it. Just my biases.
Yeah, I like that in the very first sentence, talking about increased staffing and financial incentives. So I'm fine with that.
Okay. And David, I think maybe I like what you're saying from a global perspective of the input on the, you know, that climate change doesn't have to be all doom and gloom and, oh my God, we're all going to die. I think that's super important. And our language could Stan to have that. You'll see other letters tonight and every month. So I'd love for you to work on that. I think this letter probably will go out soon. So maybe not this letter, but let's definitely, you'll see our standard language in lots of our letters. And if you go to our C2E2 site and look at letters, you'll see every letter we sent since 2013 in reverse chronological order. Pick 2 or 3, you'll see our sort of very few variations on standard language. If you wanted to work on a new template, that would be fantastic, I think. We'd love to look at that. Did I just see somebody else raise their hand? Was it Rob?
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, thanks. Just to maybe address David's suggestion here in short order on economic development and opportunity associated with addressing climate change. If we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, if there's any maybe Jenna from one of the reports that the air team has done, any cost savings on operations from going to battery electric buses, on maintenance, just some kind of savings or economic opportunity associated things that we've already done to address climate change, to just strike home that, hey, as we do these things and as the air team helps facilitate these things, it's actually saving the county money or providing new economic opportunities. So we can say something generically like that. I think it would be bolstered by a specific example if we have one off the shelf, but I understand the time crunch too. So if it's not easy to insert now, we can, as you said, Cindy, work on some generic language on economic opportunity for future letters. But if we have an example, but by all means, let's insert a sentence here to kind of show that and drive home the economic opportunity. Thanks, over.
Thanks, Rob. Joe?
Yeah, thank you. Kind of along the lines Rob was speaking about with the examples portion. When I read this, I see it as if we just get 2 more full-time FTEs, we can solve the climate crisis. But the thing is I don't see where we discuss what kind of initiatives that these would contribute to, these FTEs. What initiatives need to be scaled with these FTEs. It kind of just gives a blank check to say, we heard they needed FTEs to do something. Why don't we just give them FTEs? So I don't know how we get that information, because we're like not necessarily maybe supposed to be poking around asking what they need staff for, but it would be helpful if we could name some of the initiatives that need more staffing, need to be scaled with these FTEs.
I see Jenna's capturing that, so that's so why don't so are there other comments or questions? So why do we plan on getting this letter out? I know Jenna's on vacation this week, and if she is someone who might be able to help us find examples, and I don't want to impose while she's on vacation. If we got this out next week, it's still timely for the budget cycle, I think. So why maybe someone could move a motion to adopt the letter with changes as discussed, if we have the information and the time, changes as discussed, with Doug and I making the final approval.
So moved.
What do you guys think? Thank you, Elizabeth. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, well, thank you very much, Doug, and thank you for the interesting ideas. All right, so Doug and I will work on that. We will plan to get it out next week. All right, the next budget letter is something that at the aforementioned NRJAG, Natural Resources Joint Advisory Group, Lisa and I were asked to, so Parks and Rec is writing this letter that I sent around, and they approved it at their meeting last week. And we were asked to support that letter, which is basically asking for more funding, lays down the groundwork that our natural resources are really an incredibly important capital asset, providing billions of dollars. Sort of what you were just saying, David, except about biophilia instead of climate change, and that we need to protect them, and that the work that we've been doing on invasive plant removal is just not adequate, and the funding, trying to find some guaranteed funding, including some capital funding. So I mocked up this letter, which would be a letter of support on that letter. But, there are, as Doug said, we are hearing this is a hard budget year. I don't know what other asks are going to be in the budget. And this would, there's a lot to be said for supporting these other two environmentally focused commissions and that they will support us when the time comes. But I'm putting this out here. We were asked to do this, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts about it. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Cindy. I think this is incredibly important. I think this flies under the radar a lot of the time, but I'm very concerned about invasive vines in particular. This will absolutely eat our tree canopy faster than we can possibly recover. So I think it's incredibly timely and important that we concur with this and add to the chorus for addressing this issue.
Great. Other thoughts? Henry.
Hey, this is Scott. I would agree with
Scott,
that
sorry.
as well. And I don't think, I mean, despite the fact that it is a tight budget year, which we probably will hear from now till eternity, I think the idea that you want, which is to have these commissions that have aligned intention support each other is important. And even if we're both asking for money that the county doesn't have, it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask. They may have to make a decision. They have to make decisions every year about which programs or initiatives they will fund. Whoever makes the best case may be the winner there, but both, to Elizabeth's point, both are important, and I don't think we should not do this just because we're afraid of the budget constraints.
Right. And we have, we may, when we do more budget guidance in the spring, we may have other ideas too. And if they turn around and said to us, well, if you could have X, Y, or Z, which would you pick? We could think about it then, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't all be in play. Is that sort of what you're saying, Scott? Not to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I just think that if we want that spirit of cooperation and the broader support from other commissions, I think this is a good gesture in that direction. And I don't think it hurts our case for both to be asking for money from the county.
Great. Henry, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. And it's not even redundant, Scott, because it's a classic case of finding where multiple different stakeholders align and then asking for common funding for it. So I think we should be doing more of this, to be quite honest. But I also just wanted to make a suggestion regarding the sentence in the middle there that says, plotting the description of the very significant economic value of Arlington's natural lands. If we have, and again, this may be a little short notice for this letter, but if we have some sort of rough estimate of some dollar value of the ecosystem goods and services, I mean, I really hate to keep putting dollars on everything, but what David said is very true. People listen to dollar signs. So if there is an offhand or some figure that is, yeah.
There is in the Parks and Rec letter, the Parks and Rec letter that went around. Yeah, it has it has some detail in it. So you're thinking that we should reiterate that part too, because our letter
if it's not going to, bring the word count too high. I don't think it hurts to see that number again. It helps to drive the point home.
Okay. Doug?
Well, it makes me a little nervous, actually, that phrase, significant economic value of Arlington's natural lands. It sounds like we're selling off the North Slope or something, So I'm a little nervous about that. Like, how much could we get for selling Lion Park,
Would you feel better if we said importance, the very significant economic importance? Is it the value that bothers you? While we're thinking about that, Lily.
Yeah, the value. Economic value.
I was thinking instead of natural lands, natural capital. But I don't know, this is semantics.
Yeah, I didn't love natural lands either, but that's what they call it in the Parks and Rec letter. So I picked that up. So I don't know if there's importance to be consistent, but I agree with you that I don't love the way it's expressed. So intrinsic value. Yeah, I don't know. The Parks and Rec letter really is about the economic value, and I was impressed that they did find some statistics. It's not that detailed, but well, why don't we work on capturing? We'll put in some more of the information from the Parks and Rec letter, and we'll try to be mindful of all of the comments that we've gotten, but that we don't want to make it look like you can invest in them or you can sell them off, and we'll all just retire. And so I don't know, what do you guys think? Kevin?
Cindy, the point I want to make is it's not very often you see a one-page letter, and I think it's great. So I mean, there's so much information overload, and it's so easy to just get lost. So when we have something this pithy, I think it's great not to try to maximize it and add word count because you lose people's attention.
And we will be attaching the Parks and Rec letter, which has the detail about so what do people think about Kevin's point? I mean,
Totally agree. Yes, short and sweet. Keep it simple. Shorter is better. More likely to be read.
okay, and we are attaching all the other information in the Parks and Rec letter. Thank you, Jenna. Well said. So with that note and keeping it, so we now says significant economic value, but maybe it will say importance. With that change, are people ready to vote on this letter? If yes, would somebody make a motion?
I move we adopt the letter.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. Great. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? All right, we will get the letter out. And we'll try to do that. Jenna and I will try to get that done this week. All right, thank you. So the next item is the long-term comprehensive plan. Speaking of people who are going to meetings, Rob and Lily, thank you for covering that. And we would love to hear what's happening because this is a huge, says it in the name, the long-term comprehensive plan. It's kind of an important thing. So,
Well, yeah, it seems to be. I don't think I'll need 15 minutes, but maybe I'll start and then I'll ask Lily to chime in. So we just went to our second meeting a couple of weeks ago, but there's been a lot of community outreach on this, and that's kind of what the second meeting was about, kind of summarizing the community outreach that's done, the comments I got back. So, but let's back up. So the comprehensive plan there's 12 elements to this plan, and we haven't really looked at it and done a real thorough review of kind of the framing of this since the, I don't know, early 60s, I guess. So the effort here is to, in a nutshell, to come up with an opening section to the comprehensive plan that kind of lays out the framework. And the planning team has started with these 6 American Planning Association principles, and they are livable built environment, harmony with nature, which is probably the one most relevant for this commission, resilient economy, interwoven equity, health and safe community, and responsible regionalism. So this whole effort is to start with these principles, and then collect community input and get a kind of tailored set of principles for Arlington to put up front. And in this new revised comprehensive plan, it says very clearly in the presentation, this new chapter will not change the existing 12 elements, county vision, zoning, or land uses. But that did not stop many folks and commenters from thinking that's exactly what this is aimed to do. So in a nutshell, what happened at this meeting a couple of weeks ago, again, as I said, they went through their community outreach, 10 focus group meetings, 4 community meetings, 7 pop-ups, all this canvassing to try and collect community feedback. They reviewed it, what's important, what's not important, in the way those 6 principles are spelled out. And they went through this whole review process. Lily and I worked with Cindy on kind of an intervention representing the C2E2 Commission on what we found important, particular in harmony with nature principle, but overall. And we delivered those during the meeting. After the kind of commissions chimed in officially in this packed room, we went to public comment, and then it turned into the fireworks came for kind of a missing middle type of discussion, which is what many people think this is turning into. And people arguing for this wordsmithing up front, saying basically this is leading to higher density. Some people saying, hey, we want more density, but just along the main 4 corridors. We certainly want to keep affordable housing. But we don't want to just rezone all these single family neighborhoods for higher density multifamily housing. And so that's kind of where the meeting ended up, with a lot of public comments, and I would say probably roughly split in half between those kind of supporting a smart growth planning approach, as we have now, this kind of bullseye approach along major corridors and along metro lines, and others saying we need more affordable housing. Let's turn Arlington County into a city with high density housing everywhere, so everyone can afford to live here. So interesting fireworks. Let me stop there and see if Lily has anything to add, or Cindy. And this process is ongoing. So this was the next meeting. This is going to continue into 2026, and Lily and I will continue to track this and represent C2E2's interests. But it's going to be much larger, obviously, than our interests. But we are pushing to make sure that the harmony with nature and our principles are kind of make sure they're represented well in this opening chapter. So with that, Lily, over to you for any other insights or thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The only thing to highlight here is that throughout this process of obtaining feedback from the community and surveys that that the county ran, the results show that people ranked very low compared to other principles or concerns climate. And so what we tried to do with Rob was to try to bring attention to how climate is really a concern across all the principles and areas that the chapter is trying to work through. And so that was our intervention. But I guess that the problem is, as Rob said, that this process is being hijacked by the affordable housing and density conversation. And so other topics are less relevant. But we'll continue to push along and continue to bring attention to our cause. And I'll pass the baton to Cindy if she wants to add anything else.
Nothing from me, but I think this will be a big deal, and it's great. And it isn't surprising that some of the issues that have riven the community in recent years this is the comprehensive plan, so it's the obvious place for people to try to set that tone. So it'll be interesting. So, and you see that again in the low residential study that Lisa was talking about, which is really about pitting big single family homes against other kinds of, what the environmental impacts of those. So a lot of interesting times. So questions for Rob and Lily? Okay, we will hear more.
Cindy, just to summarize the next steps here again, so that the team is going to draft that introductory chapter for review and public comment now that they've done all kind of the community outreach over the last year or so. So that will be coming. It's on the schedule for winter 25-26. So we'll be tracking that and be ready to comment on that, and of course seek input and guidance from the commission as well. So that just to be clear on the next steps for this now.
That's great. I meant to ask that. Is there like an overall time target for when they think the comprehensive plan will be done? Is this like a 2-year, 3-year project?
I have phase 2 2026 county board and staff discussion of next steps, kind of spring 2026. I think this continues on. I think it'll be out through to 2027 on this plan. But this is focused just on this introductory piece.
And this opening chapter, which will set an important tone with the values and so on. All right, thank you. Okay. And seeing no more questions, All right, the next thing is the green building incentive policy, which we've all talked about. We talked at length about in our last meeting. And I sent out a note saying, here are the things that I saw as consensus that we had agreed to at that meeting. The full policy, and we talked to Jason and Jenna, and they gave us a sense of what was going to be in the policy, but the full policy with the detail just came out on Thursday afternoon. I sent it around along with this letter. And I think it looks good. I think it's very much along the lines of what we were expecting. But so I worked on this letter, and then Lily and Rob read it and commented. But some of the things that we thought about is, the policy does not require all electric. It hews very closely to LEED version 5.0, which is itself a huge improvement. So we didn't push for all electric because this is a voluntary policy, and we want to be. I know that the staff was trying to walk a fine line where you make it attractive enough that people do it. We could have a great policy, and if nobody opts to use it, then it's not helping us. So we didn't push for all electric. The original draft of this letter, which I wrote before I saw the policy, expressed concern that we were giving developers too much discretion to pick how they earn their LEED points. When I actually got the policy and saw that they had to do things that were in the same 5 categories that we had identified. Not suggesting the staff hadn't separately identified them, but electrification, renewables, embodied carbon, it's in the letter. All the ways to get those points, you had to be in those categories. And we felt that leaving the developers some discretion about how to earn those points within those high impact categories was okay. Again, noting this is voluntary policy. And you may remember we sent a letter saying we needed this standard site conditions to be increased, that if you keep them low, it's just very hard to get developers to opt into the GBIP when the other standards are so low. If you make them higher, it's easier to get them to take that extra step. And so we had said that it should be done in conjunction with that the standard site conditions should be raised in conjunction with the release of the GBIP. We heard from Jason and team that was just not possible because of the amount of public engagement that would be needed. The standard site conditions are not voluntary, they're not opt-in, and they affect everyone, and this would be a big change. So they wouldn't be able to do that on the schedule that the county manager had laid out for getting the GBIP done. So what we said about that is, so another thing we didn't do is say, then don't do it, hold it up until it can be all done together. We didn't do that, but we did say the proposed policy gives them 18 months to do the standard site conditions. Jason told us last time the standard site conditions weren't increased until 2 years after the GBIP came out. So we took their 18 months and cut it in half and said 9 months. I think those are the highlights. Lily and Rob, is there anything else you'd like to say before we open it up for question? And then we should talk about Elizabeth's question. But before that, Lily and Rob, anything?
Nope. For me.
No, not from me.
Okay. So Doug, we'll go to you, but Elizabeth, we will come to you. But Doug.
Yeah, I just want to thank Cindy and Rob and Lily for putting all the time into this. It's a really complex issue. You guys have boiled it down to a limited number of issues, and you've covered the ground really well here. We've got to talk about tax incentives and expedited permitting and FIAS and the extras list, and you've really covered everything and done a great job here on very short notice. And I think that's really admirable. I do strongly believe that every letter that's more than 1 page should have page numbering. And so I would just recommend page numbering for at least the final version that does go out. Thank you very much.
Sure. I swear I put page numbers in, but so Elizabeth, you had raised the issue, of let's go back to Elizabeth. It calls for a FIAS pilot where the county pays for consulting. I think up to $25,000 of consulting. Jenna, you can correct me. And is that $25,000 per project, Jenna? I think it is.
Yes.
Yes. So and for a limited number of projects, and with the plan of getting the money from the Climate Action Fund, which this commission has certainly pushed for and has been funded. And I understand Elizabeth's point that this isn't the kind of bold climate action, and this is money going into the pockets of developers. But Elizabeth, over to you.
Sure. And I apologize if there was more conversation on this and a consensus that kind of slipped past me, but I want to say, first of all, I think the overall effort is very strong from the county. The update seems achievable. I'm glad that they, had the conversations they needed to have. This simplicity is improved. And secondly, I think the letter is also really excellent. It takes a lot of difficult, complex topics and distills them and gives a really clear, compelling argument for each of these. I just can't get there on allowing, first of all, that much money to go to private for-profit companies just for raising their hand and saying like, sure, I'll study this. I'll take some, a $25,000 discount on investigating this. It may be that FIAS is vastly superior, and it may be that Arlington County has an interest in incentivizing developers to look into this. I'm just not sure it's the county's role to financially reward companies for exploring something, even if it comes out of some other fund. But to take it out of the Climate Action Fund, which is our like precious resource that really is supposed to be for bold climate action, and to allow that to go to a private company just for exploring something or getting some consulting or doing this, I just can't support that. Plus, it really seems like this pilot is very severable from the overall plan. And I know we're already looking at doing the standard site plan condition update in a separate tranche. And I wonder if we could just advocate for this pilot to be removed from the GBIP update and at least take another look at, are there other ways to incentivize? I know we've been pushing separately around tax incentives and the ability for the county to do that under Virginia law. I suspect that the county is taking too conservative an approach to how they can use the tax code and tax incentives to incentivize things. But I just can't support, first of all, using the Climate Action Fund, and second of all, that kind of financial support for private companies. I mean, the budget ask is $250,000. That's 2 mid-level employees that we're asking for in a different level, in a different letter for the AIR team and Climate Policy Office. So I wanted to just put that out there. I didn't realize that we had gotten to consensus on this, but I cannot support that. Thank you.
Yes, and Elizabeth, just to be clear, I don't think we've gotten to consensus on this. This is really, yes, that's why we're discussing this letter. Doug, over to you.
Yeah, I have some comments, but first, just to clarify, is this FIAS pilot, is it a limit, a certain dollar limit per project that the county would subsidize the study by the developer, or is it an unlimited amount?
It's up to $25,000 per project.
That's what I thought. So to me, that's not awful. That's not bad. I'm not opposed to county money going to builders or developers. I think those are the kind of financial incentives if we're ever going to actually mitigate climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to have to subsidize builders because those are the people that build the houses that emit the greenhouse gases. And so if we're going to change behavior, we have to be willing to use county money to do that. As far as the Climate Action Fund, I'm relatively new, and maybe somebody who's been around longer at the time that the Climate Action Fund was started would know better. But I've always thought it's quite muddy and murky as to exactly what that climate action fund was supposed to be used for when it was started and what it's being used for now. I'm not sure what other things the county manager is planning to use it for, whether they're more or less worthy. But the whole concept of a FIAS building is a great and very exciting one. I don't actually think it's likely that many builders are going to take us up on this opportunity, but I like to see the idea going out there in written materials that builders and architects will read because they want to see what's available. I want them to know about FIAS buildings and start thinking about FIAS buildings. So with great respect for my esteemed colleague, I must respectfully disagree with some of her no doubt wise and learned comments.
Yeah. Rob. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, just
Keeping our fingers crossed, Rob. Okay. Well, just a little background while Rob's working on his echo. That at the roundtable in August where we met with developers, it was the issue of the FIAS was raised, and the developers said they're not interested. That LEED is all LEED. LEED is what their consultants know. LEED is what their investors know. They're not going to look at anything but LEED. And we turned to the staff and said, why are you so hot on FIAS when they're so resistant to it? And they said, Vicky in particular said, it's so good. We are so anxious for people to try it that we're going to keep bringing it up. And it's very important to the county. And that's why you see it here, I think, for better. I understand Elizabeth's points, but that's why it's here. It doesn't have to be in the GBIP, but that's why they're doing it. Okay, Rob, and then David, is that you?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just supporting Doug's comments. Yeah, I think this is not, given how much they spend on, a LEED certification, and that we can't really do major capital infrastructure projects with a relatively small climate action fund. This kind of minor subsidy or sweetener to developers seems like an appropriate use of the climate action fund to try and get and incentivize developers to try something new that could be much better than LEED, which is kind of has a monopoly now in the marketplace. And if FIAS could be better, and we want to have folks try it, let's give them a little sweetener to try it. So fully support Doug's comments. Again, with great respect to Elizabeth's comments. So I don't like just kind of corporate handouts here, but that's kind of the purpose of this policy, is to incentivize them to try something new. Thanks. Over.
David, is that you?
It is me. Let's see. So I apologize. There's so little I know about this. So I do want to ask a question and then follow up with a comment. And the question is, it is phrased as a pilot.
Yes.
What are the boundaries that are placed on that pilot? Is it explicit that it is 1 year only? And is there any language about how it will be evaluated? And the reason why I'm asking this is like, when Elizabeth was talking, my instincts were like, absolutely. Like, I'm not a fan of, giving people money just to conceptualize stuff or to have, look into it. I do get it that folks aren't looking into it. So this is an incentive. And I think what could make me feel good about it is either understanding the degree to which it is limited, it is bounded, and there's another explicit decision point that we can influence, or if there isn't, then strongly recommending that something like that is inserted, because once you give a company something, it is so hard to take away.
Jenna, I think you can talk about, I think it's a maximum of 10, and I'm not sure 10, so that's where the 250,000 comes from. And then Kevin, do you want to say something directly on this?
I'm trying to figure out how this works. Is it, I just don't understand how the $25,000 is going to be spent and what is the deliverable from that spending.
Jenna, would you like to talk about this concept?
I was about to say, I think we would need Paul to answer that in more detail, but I can definitely follow up with him and get an answer to you tomorrow.
I think it's just, though, it's 25,000 up to $25,000 in consulting. You know, they use lead consultants. So in this case, they'd be using FIAS
Yeah.
consultants. in
That's
the
my
community.
understanding.
From the documents, it doesn't look like they need to adopt the
Mhm.
FIA standards or make any actual reductions or changes to their plan. It's literally just to do some modeling and consulting. So
Right.
it's not clear to me at all that there would be even a breath of emissions saved for this type of expenditure.
Looking at the chat. Are there other hands up that people?
I left mine up because I was gonna follow up. Now I have an answer to my question. So,
Okay.
so, but if anybody else has a question, I'll wait.
I'm just looking at the chat. FIAS consulting for new construction only. I think it, well, Jenna, do you know? I think it is. I don't think that
I can pull it up while we're chatting here.
The FIAS concept is for a building that basically doesn't emit any greenhouse gases and is fully decarbonized. There are very few buildings like that in the United States. The builders that we talk to have no interest in this whatsoever. Personally, I think the chances of anybody taking advantage of this are very slim, but even if they do, it's going to go to a consultant. It's not going to go to the developer itself, if that makes people feel better.
Does not.
But there is no, I agree that there is no action tied to it, and it's really money being spent to familiarize developers with this FIAS concept in the hopes that down the road. Joe?
Well, I think it also depends how much a typical like feasibility study costs, because if I'm assuming it's actually more than 25,000. So either way, the developer would have skin in the game theoretically, which means they wouldn't sign up to just burn their own money for no reason. I think that's where they're trying to get to, because if they could get a study for $25,000 or $24,999 and just set our money on fire, they might. But I'm assuming it's a lot more based off of what we've heard about how much the lead process costs. So I do see both sides of it. I could go either way depending on where this is. I do see a value of this proposal not being in the GBIP, but being separately. I don't fully understand.
We lose Henry? Do we lose?
I'm still here. I think it was Joe talking.
Yeah, Joe, yeah, it's Joe. All right, Henry and then Elizabeth.
I think Kevin may have been before, or I see Doug and Kevin's are numbered 1 and 2. I don't know if we want to respect the order. I don't know if they put their hands up first either.
While they're between I just wanted to pull up this slide because I'm not sure if everyone has seen it. But this is the breakdown of the 25K. So yes, to Elizabeth's point, it's just the completion of the study and then required to provide the results and energy modeling. The pilot program will address the existing building segment through the targeted cohort. So answering Kevin's question there with the existing building.
Right. Jenna, can you go back to the slide on the FIAS pilot? Yeah,
yep, this
so
previous
requested budget is 150 to 250. So it says as county funding annually permits. So it's not just, if it's looking at funding annually, it's not just limited to this year. The data will help the county and developers gain an understanding about applying FIAS in Arlington. Kevin, do you still have your hand up?
I do have my hand up. So I agree with Elizabeth if this is going only to the developers. But the way I'm reading this, we are going to spend some money and educate the county on how to achieve a FIAS building, a zero emission building And there may be, and it may be as much money as the county spends on various things, educating the county staff, educating us for how this is feasible. If we can get developers to have their projects as guinea pigs, will allow us, I think, to do more hammering developers going forward, because we'll have some informed basis for saying, we have had studies and they show how you can do it. And we looked at projects and the last guy didn't do it, but we're going to insist upon it. So I very much think we need to stop focusing on incentives. I'm sorry. I think we need to start using sticks, but I think this might be a way of spending money to get some educated examples that we can then use going forward to insist more, instead of just asking pretty please the developers start doing the right thing. But I
Thank
want to
you,
make sure
Kevin.
there is a deliverable going to the county and not just something that we get to the developers, they walk away and shut it up and use it later for San Francisco or someplace that actually insist on something with teeth.
Great. Henry, Elizabeth, Scott.
Yeah, at the risk of, saying sort of similar to what Kevin just said, and I'm really glad that you said it, Kevin. I was going to be a little controversial, but I don't have to be now because you did that for me. But is there any way to maybe try to explore a different way to get at this, maybe from the more of the stick side? Like, I know it probably requires more thought and would be a sort of out of scope for our current letter, but and also along the same lines is that, to second Elizabeth's earlier point about maybe pulling this out of the proposal and having it find a different home and maybe debating a little bit more about the specifics. And actually, as I was thinking about that, if there's even a way to sort of incorporate something in the spirit of this into the Corporate Climate Leaders Program or some other initiative that's being stood up with businesses in the private sector. I don't know how that would work because it's not obviously all businesses that operate in Arlington would fall under the the categorization of what would qualify for the pilot, but maybe there's like a separate corporate climate climate leaders program, sorry, for like developers and consultants when they're doing projects in the county. Just some raw thoughts, sorry, not really refined.
Elizabeth and then Scott.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to circle back. I do think that a little bit more thought into alternative ways to incentivize this. $250,000 a year is a lot of money to put towards a program to incentivize and to educate developers about this type of policy. But my concern is the worst policy offers financial incentives that are both too much and not enough. It's not enough if nobody bites at this because 25K is a drop in the bucket compared to what it actually costs. It's not really enough of an incentive, but it's out there and maybe somebody takes advantage of it. But one, maybe two developers biting at this and no forcing mechanism for actually adopting it, there's probably a better way. So it's not enough to actually incentivize multiple entities to really move forward with this. Plus, it's too much because there's so many other things that have not even really been explored as ways to incentivize this, and it seems so separate from the rest of the policy. I that's all I'll say, but perhaps we can vote on this one paragraph separately from the whole letter. I don't think that I can support the letter with that couple sentence paragraph in there. But if folks don't want to include my alternative, then at least they can show that they, put up a good fight, etc. So that would be my proposal.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, Scott, and then Doug, and then David.
Okay, so Kevin, I hate to tell you, but developers will never do the right thing unless they make money doing it. So this is a challenge. And I was thinking back to, when LEED first got its traction in the marketplace, there were lots of things that had to jumpstart it. Elizabeth, I totally get your point about not giving away things when we feel like they're otherwise justified. But when you put those two things together, the market drives most of what the developer does, and whatever they can get away with the least amount of effort will be the starting point. So I agree that maybe this should be taken out. I think that if the county wants to get behind advocating for FIAS as another alternative path to increased density, that they should look a little more closely at what those things are, how they would support them, and then if there's a different kind of incentive besides just the study, then that should be formulated into something that gets added into the green building incentive program rather than tacking this on as a let's see if it sticks thing. So.
Thank you, Scott. All right, Doug, did you just take your hand down?
Yeah, I just don't think it's ever going to be $250,000. I mean, I don't think realistically you're going to get any builders who are interested enough to, as was pointed out, they'd have to put some of their own money into this. My understanding is the level of interest is essentially zero, and we're never going to get anybody to bite at this 25,000. So
I would disagree, Doug, that it's no interest. I just checked, and there's at least five certified projects in DC, including multifamily, 250 unit multifamily buildings. So people are doing it. And one of them is an affordable housing project. I just think we have to get, and maybe it's some kind of meetings and interviews with those folks who have successfully delivered one in this market would be a good starting point. So I can't agree that no developers will do it. I think the few that we talk to, that do business in Arlington right now are saying, I'm not that interested. But it's just like everything else. Once it's been shown that it's possible, more people will start paying attention. So.
All right, David, and then Helen, you get the last word.
Thank you. And again, my brain's a little fuzzy, so sorry if I'm not getting it, but it doesn't sound like there's an end date on this. And therefore, that would be a strong recommendation of mine to explicitly ask for a 3 or 5 year window to define the pilot. I'm not used to pilots just being open-ended. I'm used to them being contained. And I love the fact that we would get the reports, but to fulfill stuff like, what Kevin and others were talking about, you set a clear date, you see how many apply for it. If none do, that tells you we need to do something different. If a bunch do, then we have a lot of information we can use to maybe start leaning into sticks or alternative approaches. But it doesn't become at risk of a subsidy or anything like that. And I'm with Elizabeth. To me, it doesn't matter whether it goes to the contractors or the builders. Contractors are well known for keeping their funding alive as well. So I feel very strongly that I can be okay with it going forward if there's a clear deadline that limits this and allows us to take advantage of it.
Helen, did you still want to speak?
Yeah, sorry. A lot of what I was going to say has been covered. I was just mostly kind of asking about if we have any data to show that there's any interest in potentially collabing with this, or if there's any incentives for companies to undergo this training. But I think a lot of that's kind of already been covered by people.
Yeah, I think that the county, what we heard from the developers at the roundtable is that they weren't interested. And I think the county is trying to generate interest by providing this incentive, but whether it's enough or not enough or too little, I think the whole GBIP has a 5-year time frame. But so in that sense, there's a limit on the pilot, but and the fact that we're accepting people as a rolling basis. But I'm wondering if maybe what we should do is just stay silent on this. Another approach would be to say that if you take this money, you have to increase your energy efficiency or something by another 2 percentage points or that you have to do something. But I think that will run counter to the county's desire to get people to just let them look at this and let them learn how it would work. But that would give them more skin in the game and make it less likely they'd just be gaming the system. But I'm wondering if, given the many opinions on this, we should just take this paragraph out of this letter.
That really
Awesome.
wouldn't satisfy me, Cindy, to be perfectly honest, because if we're reviewing a proposal that the baseline of what staff is recommending is to take funds out of the Climate Action Fund for this purpose, I think it would be really difficult for C2E2 to stay silent on that. Like, I can accept being in the minority and if other folks think that the sentence or that double sentence should stand, that's fine. But any other alternative would mean pumping the brakes on what's being proposed, or at least calling out the fact that there's some concern with tapping the Climate Action Fund.
Well, I think you suggest that we just vote on this paragraph separately. So are we ready to do that?
Yeah, so I would move to strike the highlighted sentences and replace it with the text that I had put in the chat. So
Can
while we
you go
support
ahead
the-
and read that? Yeah.
Yeah, while we support the pursuit of FIA standards, it's not clear to us that the policy goal of individual private sector developers studying FIAs provides a sufficient benefit to Arlington County residents to justify tapping the Climate Action Fund, which should be reserved for bold climate action. We encourage the board to separate this pilot from the broader GBIP proposal and consider alternative ways to support developer interest in FIAs, potentially proposing revised incentives for FIAs alongside the standard site plan conditions update instead of the GBIP.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. So we're supporting the FIAs, and we're not saying that we shouldn't use county money. We're just saying take it out and look at it separately, basically. And maybe combine it with the standard site conditions update in 9 to 18 months. But it doesn't have to be combined with that if they wanted to come out with it sooner.
Yeah, there's no real reason that this needs to be a component of the GBIP.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, and I guess we should raise our hands because so many people are off camera. Elizabeth?
I'm just voting yes.
I
Okay.
voted too.
All right. Where do I see the voting?
I think they're just raising their hands as a vote for yes.
You just have to
think
look
you have to
across.
count the
Look
hands.
Okay, I
across.
see 8. I see 8, so the motion carries. Okay. So now let's vote on the letter as a whole. So can I have a motion to approve the letter with the revised paragraph we just voted on?
So moved.
Is there a
Is it too
second?
late to ask another question about something else beside this one paragraph?
Go ahead.
I don't think so.
So one of the things we talked about, the lowest level of the green building, where's the paragraph? And I was concerned about giving anything for the lowest, increasing anything for the lowest level. Where's that? Sorry.
Are you talking about the expedited permitting?
Yes,
entry?
expediting permitting. Yes.
So scroll down, Jenna, that's near the end.
Yeah, okay. And the reason why I was concerned is we've been complaining a lot about the lowest levels being just too easy. And I knew we were also talking about it ratcheting up, but I thought it was still pretty easy. And I just hate to have promise of fast permits for something we think is pretty trivial to achieve. And that's
It's, I initially had it. So Rob, would you like to speak on this? Because
Yeah,
we
sure.
had it just at the highest level, and then we've added the middle and then potentially the lowest level, which, yeah.
Yeah, no, the idea is to get people to opt into this, right? I mean, we still have about, I think about, Jenna can correct me if I'm wrong, about 70 or 75% kind of opt into the green building incentive policy aggregate over the last let's say 7 or 8 years, right? Some years it's been close to 100%, some years it's been 50% based on the charts I've seen from the county. And we want everyone to opt into this. There could be a gradation in this where if you go for a higher level, you jump first in line, and then and if you go for the mid level, you're next behind that, and the lowest level you're behind that. And if you opt not to go into the GPIP policy, well, your permit may take a year and a half. Right now, it sounds like the average is about a year anyway. So I'd be open to indicating that basically the higher the level you go for, the faster. The higher up in line you will jump, and the faster your permit will be expedited. But I do want to have expedited permitting. I think it's a great incentive. We heard it directly from developers, and I'd rather have more developers opt into the GBIP than not. So this gives them a little bit of a sweetener, even at the lowest level, to opt into it. And if they want the permit faster, then they go to a higher level.
Their thoughts? Doug.
Go ahead.
Kevin, and then Doug.
So my only thought is you get some complexity, and the more complex, the maybe people throw up their hands. And I do think that it might be smart to just have a straightforward jump to the start of the line and maybe cut it off, if not the highest, but the highest in the middle, but just not reach down to the lower level. So I would just literally just take out the option of incentivizing with jumping ahead of the line for the lower level of the green buildings. But anyway, that was just my gut reaction.
Doug.
I mean, I hate to be micromanaging county staff. I especially hate to be micromanaging the permitting staff in the permitting office, which we've never had anybody from that office come and present to us to find out how they put things into their queue, how they assign projects, what are the main holdups on projects. I'm sure it's a very complex process, and I just hate for us to be sticking our finger into something that we really haven't thoroughly explored.
Well, should we have a vote on whether we delete and potentially the lower level? Why don't we do a quick show of hands on that particular change, just deleting? So then the policy as drafted has expedited permitting only for the highest level of the GBIP. And then we've said, let's use it for the middle too. And then what we're voting on, a positive vote means drop potentially the lowest level. So go ahead and put your hands up and we'll see if we can see.
I'm sorry, I'm not exactly clear what we're voting on here. I apologize.
Yeah, we're voting on deleting and potentially the lowest level.
That's Doug's proposal, correct?
So there's a sentence here that's bolded about expedited permitting. We encourage the county to provide it for the middle level as well as potentially the lowest level.
Right. Right now we're voting on deleting and potentially the lowest level. Those words.
Have we heard from staff as to why staff is only recommending this for the highest level and not for the middle or lower levels?
No, Jenna, do you know?
I'm referencing the about sheet.
Yeah, I don't think that we know, but I assumed it was because expedited permitting is hard and they wanted to save it and really use it to boost people into the highest level. And I think we're hearing Rob's argument that, well, we're having enough trouble getting people to do it at all. But based on the voting before, we didn't have, well, how many people do we have on the phone?
But I guess to Doug's point, perhaps inviting someone to speak might be helpful.
Right, but we're not going to be able to do that before we get this letter out. So a compromise position might be just to advocate for adding it to the middle and delete it for the lower level. And I think that's what we're voting on. Another position would be what I'm hearing you say, Doug, which is just leave it as it is. And don't meddle with it when we don't really know what's going on.
I mean, I think in general with this GBIP, as the commission, we should in general be in favor of whatever the staff comes up with, unless there's some aspect that's really, really bad. So I think we should have a high bar for quibbling with the staff recommendation, because the more we quibble, it's going to look like, well, C2E2 is not really behind this, So I think we got to look at the big picture in that way.
Rob?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure. Thanks. Oops. Damn it.
And Rob and then Melissa. Yep.
Yeah, thanks. So just a counterpoint, I wouldn't call this quibbling. I would call making sure that we get, we know that certain aspects of the GBIP didn't work as intended 5 years ago. We did a roundtable with developers. We heard that expediting permitting is one thing that they care about because time is money, and they want to be able to get permitting more quickly, and they would be more likely to opt into this, this is what we have. We have a carrot, not a stick. As you noted in the comments, Doug, because of the Dillon rule. So let's use the carrot that we have more than bonus density. We have this, we have the expedited permitted carrot, which they care about. And if we can get more of them to opt in, it's better than having them not opt in and then not build a green building. So, I would encourage using that carrot. And again, it's not running anything counter. The staff heard the same thing we did. Why they decided to only include it at the highest level and not at lower levels, I don't know, because we weren't allowed to be part of those conversations. But that doesn't mean that we should just bless what the county staff came up with. We could add our comments on why we think that expedited permitting at lower levels could be beneficial to the county and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in buildings by getting more developers to opt into the green building incentive policy. Thanks, over.
Melissa?
Rob took it out of my mouth. I totally agree that expedited permitting is a really valuable carrot, and I think it's, yeah, nothing intelligent to add more than what Rob said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess I'm making a motion on the table to delete and potentially the lowest level. So vote yes if you would like to leave it as the middle level and delete and potentially the lowest level. So Doug, I guess you'd like to take this whole section out, really. And that's not what this vote is to do. So if you don't vote, but you can make a motion to vote on that. But this motion is to vote on and deleting the words and potentially the lowest level. So raise your hand if you would like to vote to delete that. Okay. I'm seeing 4 people, and I think we have 12, so the motion doesn't carry. Doug, would you like to make a motion to delete this paragraph?
No, I think the paragraph is good because it emphasizes the issue of expedited permitting. So the board or the county staff or Jason or Jen Fioretti, whoever reads this, is going to be like, oh yeah, expedited permitting, that's important. And I'm fine with the way the sentence is currently written, even with the bold. So
Okay.
I'm fine with that part of the letter the way it is.
Thank you. Okay, so now can we have a motion to approve the letter with the Elizabeth changes, and that's currently the only change. I have a motion to approve the letter with that change.
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Bye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Joe. I just have to say, so we're going to talk about the River House SPRC, and thank you all. This GBIP was one of the biggest things we thought we would work on at the beginning of the year. And then with staff turnover, we didn't think it would happen this year at all. And it's very exciting to see it coming to fruition. And it's great to have had a chance to have been in conversations with the people who have been shaping it. And I hope it'll be great. So thank you for all the work on that. And I'm really happy that we've been able to be involved all year. So onward to SPRCs. So Joe, I know I sent an email, but River House, as he described, is this huge project. There's so many different buildings and so many different SPRCs and so many different meetings and even figuring out which end is up and so many neighbors so concerned about things. So I really appreciate that Joe filled out 3 different checklists for these 3 different projects. There are still 4 more buildings. But Joe, over to you to talk us through. And I do think there's one issue that we should talk about as a group.
Yeah.
But Joe.
Yeah. Thank you, Cindy. And yes, this has been a project that's been ongoing before I even joined. It dates back to at least 2023 when the formal processes kicked off, but I think it dates back to COVID times originally. And so what we're looking at today is both a PDSP, which is a phase development site plan, and then SPRC of 3 different developments. So through my time on this project over the past year and a half, maybe, they've come back with multiple proposals with different buildings. So I think originally there may have been 13 developments on this land, and now we're down to, I think, 6 multifamily buildings and a plot of row homes, 127 row homes. And so kind of scaled back a little bit, but it's still very complex. And so what we're looking at here is recommending both improvements on the PDSP, which is everything inclusive of the 6 buildings, and also the focus is on 3 specific ones, which you'll see in the checklist. So the 2 buildings themselves are multifamily buildings. They're both 7 stories. One's 509 units, one's 102 units. The other one's 102 units because they wanted to make bigger units themselves. They thought that was a need within the area. The townhomes are addition onto the site to be a transition from the residential behind River House to then now the massive complex that's going to be River House itself. The N1 building is going to also include retail space. It's supposed to be a VHC urgent care with some kind of emergency care built into it. So they see that as a need within the community itself. As Cindy kind of alluded to, this was a highly volatile project within the community. You had the committee itself was massive and included associations across the spectrum with all different concerns. The biggest one being density, which is one of the issues discussed here within the PDSP. It was kind of line up on one side or the other. Do you like density or hate it? And so within our proposals throughout the entire project, we stood with a lot of the commissions and the county, which was the increased density stance. The locals, mostly the folks that have homes behind it, were very anti-density. And so what JBG Smith did when they came back was came to I wouldn't even say it was a meeting in the middle, but they came back and they increased the density of certain buildings and they eliminated some. I don't think some of the buildings they had originally drawn in were going to ever be developed. I think they were just make it look really bad so they can scale it back and then people will be okay with it. Though I don't think anyone's really okay with it anymore. But the 2 buildings we're looking at today are 7 stories each. If you look at the documents, you will see that these 2 buildings they put forward here aren't the ones where they increase density to resolve the issues from the county and ourselves. And so I'm kind of confused. And if anyone has any experience with PDSP specifically, I'd love to hear your advice on that. But it seems like they had said we're going to shoot for this maybe for the other 4 buildings. We'll shoot in the range that you actually want. But for the 2 buildings we're actually putting real plans up for, we're just going to stick with the 7, which is what we originally planned to do. So I don't know if they're actually going to be held to the other density they put into the PDSP, since those aren't formal SPRCs. So it looks like that there may be an approval of the PDSP with higher density that they aren't even going to be held to. So that might be a little issue itself. But if you know the Riverhouse neighborhood or the development, I've lived in it. It's about 16 or 17 stories for each of the 3 buildings. And so coming with 7-story building, you're really lowering the density of that area. So that's kind of where we had pushed forward, especially because everyone knows the climate impacts of lower density. The townhomes themselves within the SPRC itself, you'll look at the checklist. Our checklist isn't really built for townhomes. And so it took some creativity there within the scoring. And so you may see some of that. And so it can be amendable there, but it's not a one size fits all when you're looking at townhomes compared to our current commercial area within the checklist itself. And to note, like I said in the email, this is the old checklist. So it was grandfathered in because this has been going on for eternity. And so as I said, kind of the main areas that we discussed in the letter pushing forward is density for the PDSP, 100% electrification, which they are not doing. They're using gas furnaces. And EV charging is another big one. So they are only pursuing the GBIP for N1. They are not pursuing it for the other building. So they are putting no EV charging within the other building, which is nuts in a way, because if you're looking at the River House itself right now, it has 1,600, almost 1,700 units. And there are 2 EV charging spots right currently, and they're going to bulldoze those. And so this is kind of something I feel very passionate about, having lived there and having to use those 2 chargers for 1,600 units. And so I think that is something that we kind of push for in that letter, and I think is important that should be pushed forward. And so I kind of also noted one last thing is that this thing changed so much, and some of the sustainability items were ran through at meetings and verbally mentioned that we're going to do this for all of them, but then they actually didn't support that in the documents. And so we're following up on a couple of those items. And so when seeking kind of approval on this letter and the checklists, it's kind of a approval pending any additional information within the scoring itself, but I don't think it'll have a large impact based off of some of the sensitivity testing I did. So are there any questions about this large project or anything anyone feels passionate about?
Doug.
Yeah, Joe, this is awesome. You're doing a great job here. It's really hard work, and I really respect and appreciate you for doing this. Now, big picture, I'm a little slow processing sometimes, but I'm starting to put stuff together. So we talked earlier in this meeting about minimum site plan conditions. And we talked about the need to amend minimum site plan conditions. And would you agree that for minimum site plan conditions, they really need to have a certain minimum amount of EV charging stations?
Well, I guess in the Disneyland I live in, yes. But I don't know if the county would I don't know if that's feasible, but yes, I would agree that in this day and age, if you're building something that's 100 plus dwelling units, it should have EV charging.
All right, thanks. That helps to explain to me what we're going to be pushing for later on next year on the minimum site plan conditions. Thank you.
So I noticed that the density, so, we've talked a lot about density, and I did have a few comments in this letter that Joe's already kindly accepted. But this is an existing site. It's been around for, probably 30, 40 years. It's had 1,676 units. And on that same site, we're increasing the number of units to 4,461, so more than doubling. And the county originally pushed back on the developers. The developers took a ton of heat from the neighbors, just as Joe has described. And the county pushed, so they went and lowered it down and lowered the density in response to the neighbors. The county pushed them to go even higher than they originally were. And I'm not sure where they are now, but they're definitely not at 100% as of the density that they could be at, as Joe went out, which is why they're not looking for bonus density in the GBIP. But it is, we do have the question of whether we want to weigh in, and I don't know if we can scroll down to the part, Joe, where you talk about the density. You can help Jenna find that, because density is a huge issue for the environment. But I don't know if we want to, I think this is it. Yeah, high density in key urban areas is key. A project this size, does it still say, can you scroll up a little bit? Does it still say something somewhere? Somewhere, Joe, didn't you say you'd like to see it go to 100% density?
Yeah, it's in that sentence onto the next page. Yeah, and so the county spent a lot of time putting together a Pentagon City sector plan. And so when they did the weighing of this, they weighed everything against kind of what the ideal situation was. And so they kind of scored everything against that. And so for the two buildings they put together, for two buildings right forward right now, N1 and C1, the PCSP for one of them has it at 12 to 20 plus stories. So 12 to 20, and they're at 7. And the other one is at 16 and they're at 7. So they kind of don't really reach. And they can say that they're going to meet some of these maximums with the other ones, but unless you actually put forward those site plans, I don't think it really.
Right. So, but do we say we want them to get up to 100%? I'm okay with saying we want it to be higher for all the reasons that you've put. I had a comment in here and I don't see it anymore. So maybe you made a change.
I think I accepted all of them. I think an amendment could be to meet the PCSP, which is the Pentagon City site plan. Kind of goes back to Doug's comments about going forward with the county staff's recommendations. And so if the county kind of puts up what their ideal situation is, I think that might be what we say. So if they put a range of 12 to 20, I say, be somewhere within that range.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I know I had a comment in here that said something like, group, what do you think about, how much of a position we want to stake out on density? But I think saying follow the PDSP is not that, controversial of a position as you're describing it, Joe. So this is a very hot issue, and I'm sure the neighbors will continue to fight it. But I think this is going to happen, and there are a lot more buildings to come. They're planning to build senior housing. I heard what you said, Joe, that these plans may not come to fruition, but there's a lot more on this property.
Yep, they say senior housing to come and condos for sale. So we'll see.
So any thoughts? Are we ready to vote on this letter? With huge thanks to Joe. Can I have a motion to vote on this letter?
I had
Kevin,
one thought.
yeah.
We start off with a positive sentence, and I really even hate to have anything positive to begin with. They're talking about we commend you on incorporating applicable assist, and then we say but. I think I would just skip to the but to begin with, and maybe later on you can say we recognize you did a few sustainable things, but overall this is really bad.
I think is it the sentence above that one?
Yeah, the sentence above that one helps.
It says it's encouraged by their commitment to incorporating applicable sustainability.
Yeah.
This is JBG Smith, who does do a lot of, they did the Amazon building. They do sustainability, but as Scott pointed out, they only do it when they're getting paid to do it. So
Yes, and I've worked with multiple same faces on different SPRCs from JBG Smith. They do come forward and say, "Here's a lead, leave us alone," kind of thing. And so
yeah.
the constant, yeah.
So how about Joe and I do tinkering, but the letter gets approved in subject to like the change that Kevin just mentioned. We have a motion to that effect.
So move.
All right.
Can I just,
Doug?
I just, in terms of drafting stuff, I mean, I want to follow up on what Kevin said. I mean, I really, if you're going to say, oh, it's good in this way and all this kind of vague, generally positive stuff, but if it's a bad project, I think the fact that we think, the bottom line that we think it's a bad project and they're using gas is we lose that, and it's undercut if we say, oh, we commend you for doing this, or we commend you for your attitude. So thanks.
Okay, well said. Okay, I think we have
While I understand that this is such a complex project of stakeholders,
Did we just lose Joe?
I lost the audio, yeah.
I think he lost his connection. He's not listed anymore. I'm sure he'll call back in. So let's wait until Joe does call back in. Jenna, let us know when you let him back in.
Here it comes.
Okay. Joe?
yes, technical
Sorry,
difficulty.
sorry, we lost you. You were saying that it's so many different stakeholders, and that's when we lost you.
Yeah, it was just saying that it's hard because we're saying if you move 1 inch, they move a different inch the other way, and so this has kind of been an ongoing battle of trying to get them to meet in the middle. And so I am encouraged to increase the density, while I do really hate the gas furnace. So, but
All right. So why don't you and I work on that? And this is coming. Planning Commission is hearing this next week, so we'll have to work on it and get this letter out tomorrow, ideally. But so we have a motion on the floor to adopt the letter, subject to post tinkering about tone and making sure our message isn't lost. By Joe and me. So do we have a second for that motion? I think that's my motion at this point.
Second.
Right. All right. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you again. And thank you again, Joe. All right. Our next item, I don't think Alex is here. He's sick. He sent this letter around right before the meeting, which was very kind of him because he's obviously very sick. And this was the adaptive reuse letter. Alex wrote our last letter on our first letter on adaptive reuse, in which he said, and we talked about this at some length at the last meeting, that since there's no SPRC meetings and no way to ask for information and no requirement that all this stuff be posted, that he really couldn't get information. I remember he drove over to the last building and went through the garage himself looking for EV parking because it's an existing building. That's the idea of adaptive reuse. And so we wrote a letter basically saying, you've asked C2E2 to help you with these adaptive reuse projects, County Board, but we're not getting any information. And so therefore, here's what we like to see in buildings generally, but we really can't tell you whether that's what's in these buildings because we don't have access to the information. And Alex did write to the developers and they wrote back. I think they didn't write back until almost the day of our meeting. But in this, so there were 2 more adaptive reuse projects. And we sent our letter saying, hey, we can't help you with adaptive reuse. So I wasn't going to have us do anything. But Susan Cunningham, the board member who's our liaison, asked us specifically to comment on this one, the 1800 and 1901 South Bell Street in Crystal City, because it's another JBG Smith project, and they had said that they would provide a lot more information, even though they weren't required to. And but when I read this letter, which I looked at very quickly before the meeting, Alex is still saying there's really not the information that we need for our analysis, even though he says there is more information, but not enough. So I think that's the main point. And then he goes on to again say, this is what we would like to see. But these adaptive reuse projects are still a work in progress. They're new to the county. They're new to us. And I don't know that we can get a lot further on this letter. This is going to come up to the county board right away. So I hate to say this, but maybe we should if we want to send a letter at all, which I kind of would like to do since Susan Cunningham specifically asked us to, I think we have to approve it based on this version and then work on it and try to get it out. I don't know if we can do it this week. I'm not sure when it's going to the board. Probably not till the 15th. Anyway, if I'm totally open to comments or ideas on how to proceed, and I'm sorry that Alex is sick, and it's very nice of him to make time to get this draft done.
Cindy, just as a comment, I think it's perfectly fair to point out that we don't have the information to assess the environmental impact, and that may be not necessarily by design, but if the point is to quickly and cheaply allow these projects to move forward, and that's a casualty of the process, then I think they should at least go into that with their eyes open, and be aware that they're trading a bit of a blind spot on the sustainability impacts for the speed and ease of this high priority for them. And that may be the case, but we should at least point it out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if we have to keep pointing it out, I guess that's I mean, they asked us, so and they said this one has more information. So I think it is worth sending this particular letter. I'm not sure about every single adaptive reuse. We'll see how many there are. Joe and then Doug.
Yeah, quickly. I just agree. I read through it before the meeting, and I think it is consistent with the last one. So I'm okay approving it now.
Thank you. Doug? Rob? Doug and then Rob?
Withdraw my request to
Okay.
speak.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm okay approving it now too. If we want to send a message that we don't have the information, I might just recommend bolding that sentence. I forgot it. Maybe scroll up a little bit, Jen. I think it's like the first or I can't go all the way up to the top. Yeah. This at the end of the second paragraph, in the absence of a site plan review committee process for adaptive reuse projects, we are not in a position to sign America. If we keep making that point and bold it in every letter we send through on this, I think maybe that's the way to get the message across, especially since that may get lost in a 3-page letter. But this is otherwise, I think this letter points out a lot of the things that we would otherwise want to point out, and I think I'm fine sending it if everyone else agrees. Thanks. Over.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm not sure we want or will ever get an SPRC process for these adaptive reuse. I think that's one of the carrots that they have, is that they don't have to go through all that public engagement. But they could post more stuff. They've got to have it. They've got to know what systems they're using, right? Anyway, so can I have a motion to approve this letter? Subject to any final changes. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Letter passes, and thank you, and we'll work on it. All right. All right. Elizabeth, the Energy Committee's exciting letter, 5 minutes or less.
I will be very brief. I just wanted to make commissioners aware that the Energy Committee is planning to send a letter to the county manager summarizing our work this year and making some recommendations, which is in line with our charter. C2E2's charter tasks us with making recommendations directly to the board. The Energy Committee makes recommendations to the county manager and directly to staff. We have not done so in the past, to my knowledge. We're at any formal recommendations. We considered, a letter that was more focused on APS. We still plan to send that to the APS Sustainability Committee, but a more global letter directly to Mark Schwartz. I will let this group know for any feedback you might have. The recommendations we're considering are focused around the fact that energy prices are rising and our energy needs are growing, and this challenge compounds the existing climate crisis in concerning ways. So the letter will focus on recommendations that can provide budget benefits in the same way we've been discussing, not just investments, but ways that the county might be able to raise revenue or find revenue in different places other than the budget to make these investments. So for example, one recommendation would be to update our assumptions about the cost benefit of certain building efficiency measures. So of course, when energy prices rise, the first thing that you should do is use less of it. There are a number of building efficiency measures in county buildings that maybe have not penciled out in the past that could in the future, things like geothermal heat pumps, et cetera. Another recommendation will be to acquire assets that generate or store electricity. We believe, based on the testimony that we've heard, or our presentations that we've heard at the Energy Committee, that there will be increased pathways for other entities to potentially fund clean energy assets, distributed energy assets that can be monetized through things like virtual power plants, which we've discussed on this commission as well. We learned that there is a Commonwealth-wide virtual power plant that currently exists that Arlington County is enrolled in for some of their assets. But we do think that as energy policies change on the federal level, there could be incentives for large energy users to finance clean energy assets, distributed energy assets that we would want to take advantage of. Another recommendation would be encouraging consumer awareness of energy options, focus on low-income residents, and public-private partnerships that could lead to interesting arrangements and transactions that could benefit the county's energy use. We think the Corporate Climate Leaders is an important program to continue and continue to support because it will lead to some of these public-private partnerships, not a direct line, but enhancing those relationships, I think will bear dividends for the county. Also considering some recommendations around capturing data and how to use AI in county workloads, potentially streamlining programming, but haven't made final decisions. My intent is to have input primarily from the Energy Committee that would actually vote to approve sending this letter and to send it to C2E2 for not approval, but review and awareness. And if C2E2 would choose to send that on to the county board or any other body, that would be great. But my intent is not to have C2E2 amend or vote on the letter. So happy to take feedback, though, on some of those recommendations or the process that I've laid out.
Thoughts, questions, comments? Thanks, Elizabeth. A lot of really exciting thought coming out of the Energy Committee, and thanks to the many people on this call who are on both C2E2 and the Energy Committee. Rob?
Yeah, thanks. It's comprehensive, and I look forward to supporting this through the Energy Committee. This is more of an implementation thing. This almost sounds like, with the number of recommendations you just laid out, it's something we would want to kind of track and keep our own kind of internal scorecard on whether or not they're implementing things, and kind of hold feet to the fire, because it's just, if it's 2 or 3 things, it's good for 1 or 2 page letter. If it's 10 things, it can get lost, and then we want to have a simple way to really make sure that that our recommendations are being considered. But that's more on the implementation side. So just thinking,
Yeah.
starting to think through that now. But all great suggestions. Thanks. Over.
That's a good point, Rob. And based on previous feedback from Doug and others, I do think that the letter will be short and sweet with appendices and more documentation sort of behind the cut that can provide supporting materials and information. So trying to make it very readable at first with supporting detail for those who really want to dive in.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll look forward to seeing that. It sounds amazing. Okay, can I have a motion to approve Jenna's summary of our October meeting?
Second.
Anybody?
So
Great.
I'll move, sorry.
Yep, I think I heard a motion in a second.
Okay, yep.
So any discussion? If not, I did make some changes and they've all been accepted, I think, by Jenna already. So I think we have a motion. So all in favor of accepting this, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you for that. All right, we're in our last 2 minutes. I just want to say, in terms of updates, thanks to those of you who've sent in your bios, and please send them in if you haven't. I think it is really nice for the county public residents to see who's on this commission, and I think it's also helpful for all these applicants we're getting to get a sense of who we have and what we might be looking for, and the variety of qualifications and all of that. So please send in your bios. I did send around the 2026 meeting dates, and we didn't get any concerns about them, so they will stand, and Jenna will send out, not this week while she's on vacation, but at some point we'll send out meeting requests for next year. Lily, I'm giving it to you. The other things we can save till next time. Lily, is there anything you'd like to say about transportation? Because you've been doing a lot of work on that as well.
Just very quickly to remind you that we have until December 3rd to provide the county staff with feedback on the priority and modalities, the network modalities, the core views ranking that they propose, as well as, and most importantly, the policies that they have proposed. And I created a form that I distributed, so please just take a look. Particularly if you don't have enough time, just concentrate on the policies. And I would encourage you to look at whether we're missing something. I don't want to bias you, but think about whether climate is really full and central on the policies. And just give me your comments. I will work with Kathy on collating and organizing the information, and I plan to circulate it before we submit it to the county staff. And that's it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Lily. So we have, so Katie and Kevin signed up to take the SPRC at the last meeting. There are 2 more that have moved to the active list. I've gotten some volunteers, but still open to hearing from anybody who would like to take on another SPRC. One is townhouses, and as Joe pointed out, I did the townhouse project too. They are different, but they're interesting in their own way. As we look at single family homes and residential, they're interesting. And the other one is a high rise. So email me if you would like to take that on. But I think we're in a good place. And thanks to all of you for all the work. And I think, is there anything anybody else would like to say? Legislative priorities, we've had great discussion with the county's new legislative liaison, Brian Estee. But we'll see where they go. We'll see what happens this year. It'll be an exciting year in Virginia with the election results. Anything else? All right. Sorry so many people are sick. Stay healthy, have a happy holiday, and feel better. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Steve.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.